Welcome everyone to the panel Enabling Digital Transformation with IoT. And today we have with us to discuss more about the topic Shom Shubhrapal Chaudhary, who is the co-founder of IoT Forum and who's a partner at Bharat Innovation Fund as well. Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar, who's chairman of IoT Future Tech Panel and is president Aries Communications. Mr. Larry Peng, who's head of business development at IoTex, and Amit Sukeja, who's founder CEO of Zest IoT. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the panel.
Thanks so much for having us.
Great.
Exciting.
Shom, let me begin with you. How are companies across vectors, how are companies across various sectors using IoT to enable digital transformation?
So, Vaishnavi, that's a bit of a loaded question. So,
Yes.
what I will try to just I've been involved with IoT. In fact, my first startup was in the IoT space long back. I guess things started kind of really happening 2012, 13 onwards. We started this IoT forum as part of TIE Bangalore back in 2014. So we have seen kind of the journey of IoT, right? And as far as I can kind of say, today, if you look at it, each one of the verticals has gone in its own pace. Consumer IoT devices, be it in commercial buildings, be it in health tech, be it in the industrial domain, each one of them have taken and gone off on their own pace, right? And IoT is essentially a collection of multiple technologies from the sensor to the cloud and so on, right? And at the end of the day, think about it like as IT happened from the early 90s, and over the past 20, 30 years, we have seen it kind of change over time, getting different aspects kind of getting over time, getting deployed over time. IoT is probably also in the same route, in the same journey. It is not like a certain specific technology kind of gets adopted overall. It's a mishmash of multiple technologies, multiple platforms, multiple use cases. So more so going into the industrial domain, you see multiple different use cases. So I think it's more of a journey rather than one shot IoT solution overall. I would kind of start off with that. And each one of the market verticals, each one of the specific industries, they go on implementing IoT in their own pace with their own technologies, with kind of the own ROI schemes and so on. And post-COVID, we are seeing a much faster adoption in terms of the IoT deployments, use cases, IoT deployments, and so forth.
Larry, what are the challenges in the deployment for the end-to-end IoT solutions? It can be in terms of infra, it can be in terms of talent, capital. I would like to hear from you on the same.
Yeah, IoT is such a diverse industry, right? It's more like a horizontal technology that applies to many verticals, right? The IoT is just massive. By 2030, it's going to be anywhere between 50 to 100 billion smart devices out there. My favorite stat about the Internet of Things is McKinsey estimates by 2030, the IoT is going to generate anywhere between $5 and $12 trillion in economic value. And when you think about where that value is going to be coming from, it's going to be everywhere from our homes to our businesses to our factories, to the sky, to the sea. There's going to be so many different implementations of IoT, right? I think the challenge is identifying which kind of layers of the tech stack apply best for you, right? If you think about the anatomy of any IoT device, they all look kind of similar on the inside, right? They have some type of way to connect to the internet. They have some type of battery or power supply, some compute, memory, storage. But depending on, and they have some sensors, right, to convert the physical phenomena into digital data. But that's kind of the common thread across all of them, how they're used and how you choose, whether you're using LoRa connectivity or using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. There's just so many different considerations, and that's just connectivity, right? It's interesting because Moore's law is kind of over now. Devices and chips are not getting faster every couple of years now, but they are getting cheaper and they are becoming more available. Not during COVID, but hopefully after this pandemic, the chip shortage is going to be fixed. So it's just such a broad space, as Sean put it. There's so many different ways to apply IoT in our personal and professional lives. So.
Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you. Amit, I'll move on to you because you have some interesting IoT solutions and they have been used in the aviation space as well. Now, as critical as the sector is and as critical as the technology is, how do you measure the outcomes from these deployments?
That's a very interesting question, and I get this every day. And just to give a little background also to the audience. So we started our journey from aviation so that every flight can depart on time and arrive on time. That's the agenda we're driving from an industry impact perspective. And COVID gave us opportunity to diversify, and now we have acquired customers in oil and gas, steel, manufacturing, and ports as well. And to your question now, I think I will give a slightly different perspective. Is what I see from industry and what customers at a CXO level ask repeatedly is there is a visibility, which is the first problem. Because a CEO of a company of a steel industry, I was talking to 2 weeks back, he doesn't get the data of how his manufacturing plant is working, to how an aircraft which lands on the ground and how the different actors like fueler, caterers, airlines, airports, ground handlers work together in making sure that every part of the operation from a flight perspective is taken care and on time, and making sure that flight is ready for departure. I mean, similarly, ports, every ship which is coming and it is getting cargo or the load unloaded to the new set of cargo which is getting loaded and it is departing on time. All of this adds to the economical value of each and every player doing in the industry. So visibility of operations is the fundamental issue. And to a great extent, it has different level of maturity and complexity across different sectors. And there, number of customers in the West have first tried to solve this as a problem, whereas countries like India look at direct economical value benefit out of it, which means if the resource is not delivering efficiency, then the business case is not getting approved. So that way, we see different industries coming up with different complexities and expecting different kind of economical value out of it. And fortunately or unfortunately, we were tested out of delivering economical value at a resource level, which means if I can save 1 minute additional. Or recently, our technology helped steel industry customer reduce their heat cycle time by 6 minutes, which means it directly impacted to 14% productivity of their entire process. Which means with the existing resources, existing infrastructure, existing capital, just adding incremental raw material cost, they can produce 14% more material per day of their production. That's the kind of impact customer sees and expect, and how IoT to visibility technology to connected operation plays role in different industries.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you for that comparison.
Vaishnavi, I would probably want to add one more item, right?
Yes, sure.
Historically, talking with a bunch of industry experts, 2,300 plus startups in our IoT forum, what we are routinely seeing, originally it probably started from, hey, how can I improve from an efficiency standpoint, right? My production or anything of that sort, be it with asset tracking or resource management. So that was the first aspect in terms of productivity, efficiency improvement. The second piece also kind of came in, which was more in terms of quality improvement. Am I be able to detect the defects and so forth early on using IoT, camera-based monitoring aspects and so forth. The third piece, which we are actually seeing more post-COVID era, is more from a business continuity standpoint as well, right? So suddenly everything stopped. I cannot send workers out to the factory. I cannot monitor things which I used to do physically. Now I have to automate. And every time I kind of hear now that, hey guys, we've already taken that plunge of digital innovation, automation, all of these aspects, right? There's no going back. And I think COVID was a pretty big trigger as well, primarily from a business continuity standpoint.
Okay, thanks, Shom. We'll stay with you here. Now, let's talk about standardization that exists. My question is the framework enough?
I think Rishi would probably be the best person to answer this on standardization.
Yes, I will get to him. What do you have to say about it?
No, I think, standardization is kind of a loaded question. Question essentially is which part needs to get standardized? Is it kind of the network? Is it kind of this, the sensor aspects? IoT platforms, analytics, and so forth, they will probably not kind of get standardized, right? The basic protocols in terms of the layers, MQTT, and so forth, those are more or less people are using similar kind of solutions and so forth. From a network standpoint, I think historically people have been using a hodgepodge of multiple technologies, right? Starting from the age-old SCADA networks and so forth. People have used Zigbee, people have used LoRaWAN, multiple technologies are at play. Would you essentially see a standardization out there? I think there's a new aspect which is kind of coming in, enterprise private networks, right? With 5G, compatible with NB-IoT and so forth. And many times I'm hearing the aspect that, hey, it's a wired equivalent wireless network. It's a man and machine same network. So I think to a certain extent, large enterprises might move towards the 5G/NB-IoT aspect. But again, standardization aspect is a loaded question again, in terms of which aspect, which layer are we talking about? Because IoT is overall huge from sensor to the cloud, and multiple dynamics, multiple technologies, and not a single technology fits all these use cases as well.
Sure. Rishi, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for being a bit late and not on video.
No, we understand. That's fine. Yes, while we are on the subject of standardization, of course, it's one of the challenges in the deployments of the technology. I was asking Shom the same thing. Is the framework enough? What else do we need to do? And if we have to bring everyone under the same umbrella and maintain uniformity, what's the road ahead?
Oh, Mike, Vaishnavi, let me give you a bit of background and then I'll start with responding to your question. The thing is, I am from Aries Communication, which is a 2-decade-old IoT company in Silicon Valley. We started in India, started selling solutions. We are now in Africa, Middle East, everywhere, trying to sell IoT solutions, different use cases, as my co-panelist mentioned. So we are selling IoT solutions. Simultaneously, in 2014, me and Shekhar Sanyal from IIT, who's the head of the director there in IIT, we thought about creating an IoT panel. And the reason for creating panel, Vaishnavi, at that time was, how can we evangelize about Internet of Things to the policymaker, to the industry, to the academia. And then later we thought startups also, because they're also the people who should be aware and start working on it. Today, we have completed so many years and a lot of progress, but the thought of standardization, one framework fitting all, when we are talking about a horizontal, and that horizontal is supposed to talk to automotive, to talk to industry, to talk to utility, to talk to healthcare. How can I have the same framework? Okay. So honestly, why there can be a standard on how the data can be communicated. There can be a standard on the communication. There can be standard on some level of protocols. Okay. But can I have a one framework set for all? That's not what, honestly, my expectation is. And that's not what we are even targeting for. What we have been able to try, Vaishnavi, is to see healthcare as a sector, energy as a sector, smart city as a forum, manufacturing as an area. How can we have some level of framework and consistency among them, not in all Internet of Things? Okay. How can we have, that kind of some level of framework that can be utilized by an industry segment or a market segment is what we are trying to do to standardize, not one thing fit for all. Okay. While I was hearing the discussions, the use cases have gone to an extent that, people are working in many areas. And whenever I think, when we are trying to create a unique problem and trying to solve a unique problem, okay, every problem has their own kind of solution. You need a different kind of sensor, a different kind of data, different kind of analytics. Okay. So, while the standardization word looks very nice, but the kind of technology we are into it and the kind of challenges we are facing is getting things, forcing us not to have a standard. And honestly, Vaishnavi, I am diverting a bit. But in 2015, the government of India started thinking about creating an IoT policy. Okay. And they invited me and I was part of that team. And I requested, please don't make a policy. Let us mature. Let us mature. Let me do mistakes. Let me understand what kind of challenges will I face. And once I'm in a position to scale and see what I really require from the government to scale and learn, any kind of facility so that I can be more available to all and provide value, then only we should work on a policy. In a similar fashion, Vaishnavi, I don't know, while we are maturing, are we mature enough even to create a standard for a particular industry? I don't have an answer. Okay. Every day, I really want people to come out with new and new things, new kind of technologies, new kind of connectivity. And so that's what my answer. If you want anything more, I can keep on.
That's a fresh perspective, and I appreciate that. Let me make mistakes. Let me help scale. Don't impose any standards. Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's a unique way to look at it. Larry and Amit, my next question is to you guys. Security is one of the major challenges that everyone talks about when we say IoT. I mean, it's said in the same breath, in fact. So how do you tackle that? What are the measures involved? What do you do in your respective companies?
Yeah, I guess I can start, right? My company, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. My company works on blockchain, specifically for smart devices. Our goal is to deliver decentralized identities to machines, allow them to be self-sovereign, own their data, own their identity, and interact with each other through this kind of interoperable framework, right? Blockchain is kind of seen as this panacea, this silver bullet. It's not, right? It's not going to solve all of the IoT's challenges, especially from the security perspective. I mean, when you think about security, you have to think about data in transit, data at rest, data in computation, and blockchain is not going to solve all of those things. But what it can do is provide standardized protocols that these devices can follow, right? We have a really big belief that tamper-proof hardware in the form of secure elements, TEEs, combined with tamper-proof software in the form of blockchain smart contracts is really the foundation for a lot of these automation, right? If you trust the hardware that's generating this device, you trust the business logic that's executing logic on top of that data, then you can have more end-to-end kind of security and trust in your solutions, right? But I think the theme of this panel today is, IoT is just so broad, right? There's no cookie cutter, one-stop shop to solve every issue. You really have to address every specific implementation in a different way, right? But we have more and more tools to do it these days, whether it's 5G connectivity, AI, ML, fog, edge computing, all of these things are kind of coming together and enabling things that we couldn't do in the past.
Amit, your views on the security issue?
I think we as a company, we take a quite pragmatic approach towards the security. Broadly, security, we dissect, first of all, from a customer lens that what is the appetite of the customer, what is the infrastructure, what are their compliances and mandates, and ultimately, what is their appetite to invest. I mean, if you talk about security, there's no end to that in terms of sophistication, like using quantum computing and quantum encryption, right? That's the future also we are going to see as well. And if I talk about example in aviation, and we use cameras also to that part of our solution from an IoT and edge compute AI perspective, airports have very strict set of mandates, and there is no second thought and compromise to that. And in setups like that, we have a partner like Cisco. We have a Cisco validated design to support for airport part of the implementations. Then there are similarly other kind of customers. And I think as Larry was talking about, there are different set of choices also available in terms of data encryption, to using Dockers, to containers, to using platform as a service. And we work with Dell, for example. So there's a platform level, let's say, product which is available from Dell. They have invested a set of, let's say, tools and technology in that. And if you can package our product using a Docker and containers, and it can be leveraged further by the third type of, let's say, layer of security provided by partners like Dell, I think it comes in a very kind of, let's say, robust mechanism, which is almost very difficult to crack, and maybe only ethical hackers will require to crack that kind of layer. And that comes at a optimized cost from a customer perspective. So I think that I'm just giving a kind of flavor of how we take this approach in a pragmatic manner to solve different needs and mandates from different customers across different industries perspective.
Thank you for that answer, Amit. Amit, where are we in terms of talent, in terms of investment regarding IoT?
That's an interesting point. I think IoT as an industry, if I pure play talk about hardware, I think India has a lot of challenges in that. Ability to get a optimized, cost-effective hardware board or module with the integrated sensors and compute and communication, it is still a nightmare. We still, to a great extent, are dependent on, let's say, a lot of external players. So India definitely lacks that part of the talent. Now, whether it is good or bad, whether we as a country should invest, I really don't know that answer. In terms of the overall talent, I think India is definitely leading, and we hear those news that people are jumping and offers are 2 times, 3 times in the market because of the digital wave. And as the other panel members said, how COVID has accelerated. The ability to manage, monitor, and run the business with the continuity, whether there is a COVID or tomorrow there is XYZ, is the most important need of the hour. And I think thankfully, a lot of customers have realized and increased their IT budgets towards that, which has led to projects. So talent from a digital technologies perspective, latest state-of-the-art technologies perspective is definitely in hot demand. And companies like us, and in fact, I would say large companies also everywhere, it is a big challenge to retain and continue and nurture and develop the talent in current time period as we live. In terms of investment, I remember when I was raising my first round, IoT as a hardware appetite of the investors in this part of the world is definitely not much. Deep technology, yes. Value delivering to customer, yes. Scalability of business, which I mean, we operate in B2B where the scale typically is not as like a consumer business. So interest is also less, but definitely there are players and there are value pickers. And as I was talking about some of the companies, we also got similar kind of interest and taste. And I think for us personally, we also got tested that COVID and how to survive in a customer capital than an investor capital, which I think worked pretty well to our favor as well. So digital technology talent, of course, the waves we are going through is definitely a challenge. Investment in hardware is not that easy. And with the patient capital, which can wait for 5 year, 10 year to return to get some IP and product of that kind of large scale is very, very difficult to get out of India. Overall, I think still like the way we have shaped from a services industry to now, I see India moving towards the new wave of product-based, let's say, IP and the capital they're creating for the world market. I think that's where I see a significant potential, and we will continue to face these kind of challenges as we pioneer and take our products from India to a global market.
Larry, you are halfway across the world from us. So I will ask you this question. Where are you guys in terms of talent and investment? Is your answer similar to Amit, different from Amit?
I think so. I echo the thoughts that the other panelists had mentioned. Something that I think is very fascinating is, I went to a very technical high school, and then I went to MIT for college, studied finance and econ. I didn't study any computer science, but I'm pretty sure there's middle schoolers out there that can code better than me. And, I say this because I have kids are playing Roblox, they're playing with Raspberry Pis, they're playing with Arduino, ESP32 boards when they're like in middle school, even elementary school, right? So this is a really big phenomenon, I think, thinking about the next generation of talent and what they're learning at an early age. It's not just STEM, but it's like pretty hardcore engineering at a very young age, right? And that's both talent and investment, but in the future generation, right? I am in San Francisco right now, but the blockchain space, which I operate in, is very, very global. It's meant to be borderless by design, right? And we get to talk to companies and founders all around the world. And India is one of the, and Bangalore specifically, one of the hotbeds for talent these days. But it's interesting to see that different areas of the world also specialize in different kinds of things, right? And we've had really amazing times. We've always thought that going to the Germany's of the world, where Bosch is headquartered, but we found the best talent in India, in Poland, in Warsaw, in even like in places like Argentina, right? That have very, very talented coders and things like this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is talent can come from anywhere these days, especially everything's so digitized. Doesn't really matter, where we are having this conversation, the physical worlds and the digital worlds are starting to blend together. So Yeah, I think that's my thought about it.
What about investment, Larry?
Investment. Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, I'll speak about, some of the companies that we invest in, right? So at the core of what my company does is it's called IoTeX. We're infrastructure, right? We're a platform trying to enable application builders to build these kind of decentralized Web3, own your data, own your identities type of solutions, right? I started this maybe 4 years ago in 2017. And at that time, the entire market cap of blockchain was, way less than $1 trillion, right? And I would say people thought about the intersection of blockchain and IoT as a huge joke, right? We're very much involved in a lot of industry consortiums where the blockchain leads at the industry IoT consortium, founded a couple IEEE standards. And, up until maybe a year ago, people didn't really take this seriously. Now that there's more use cases out there, both on the enterprise blockchain side and on the public blockchain side, our companies our network, our platform houses about $1 billion in assets now. And it's really amazing to see this transformation just in the past two years, right? So that's my point of view about investment. I can't speak to really the, in my past life, I was a consultant, so I understand that big digital transformation projects are usually driven by regulation or compliance, right? But it's interesting to hear the other panelists say that, it's not about cost cutting. It's more about, business continuity. And I think that's just a sign of the times, right? With COVID.
Shom, I'll come to you. And you've heard Amit and Larry speak about the talent gap and also about investment. Rishi also mentioned what he's doing with IIT and certain action points in terms of courses. What more can be done, and where should we headed in terms of bridging the gap?
See, from I'll probably wear the hat as a partner at Bharat Innovation Fund, more from an investment standpoint. So I'll take that question kind of first. See, the good news, there's both good news and bad news, right? So back when 2013-14 timeframe, there were no takers even from an investment standpoint. IoT investments started happening even in India from 2015-16 kind of onwards. But frankly speaking, see, the good news is there are multiple groups of investors. So you see the typical financial investors like us, and Amit rightly pointed out, we have to give back returns to our investors within a stipulated time frame, right? But there are also investors, more strategic investors. A bunch of family offices have kind of come in, right? So there are multiple pools of capital now to tap on. Right? So that's the very good news from the startups standpoint. Now, what typically VCs like us, and there's a difference between the strategic or more aligned investors versus truly financial investors, right? We tend to look at, hey, what are the technologies, what are the elements that will scale massively? That's the way our step jumps, right? Large market step jumps. Now, in case of the solutioning companies, one of the problem essentially is I've seen many of them to be more systems integration specific, right? And those are kind of hard to scale. It is a slower scale, let me put it this way. So what we have found is, again, we have invested or looked at companies which are building core technologies, be it AI, edge processor, or a 5G kind of a solution and so forth, which is more horizontal. It can go across multiple markets. We like the solutions that are a bit more verticalized focused. For example, it's kind of a cookie cutter approach. You solve it for a certain industry, certain vertical, or maybe even a sub vertical. But that sub vertical, there is enough market to scale that up quickly. Otherwise, what happens is typical platform companies and so forth. So they get into the mode of more solutioning, which means it's a product plus a solutioning kind of a company, or systems integration plus a product company. And it becomes a bit difficult to scale up, because if you go over to an industry, right, there are so many different use cases. Which one are you going to attack first, right? versus, hey, it's a cookie cutter asset management solution for this market vertical. Or, hey, I'm going to do predictive maintenance for my boilers or a specific type of machines. And there are multiple machines which doesn't need me to go from one industry to one industry or one factory to one factory and change my entire landscape, learn, run my AI ML routines, learn every specific machine, right? So those are kind of the challenges of scaling up quickly. And of course, the typical financial investors looking on how to scale up a 3x to 5x every year or every 2 years, versus the strategic investors, which are much more aligned, the family offices who are now investing. I would probably say that has opened up in a big way for the startups as well. Now, in terms of the talent, I agree with Amit. I think from a hardware standpoint, we got a issue, and this has been around for quite some time. From a software, analytics, even network standpoint, I'm seeing a good amount of wireless networking capabilities now as well. So those software, we are rich, right? On the hardware side, we are still not there yet. But I've seen multiple companies as well who are providing design services, very customized design services. There's one company, Lion Circuits, which I advise from time to time. They take that entire load off from post-design to getting your prototypes, the boards, everything delivered to your desk, right? Within 5 to 10 days. So you don't have to now haggle on what is the BOM. You don't have to go after going after 3-4 different EMS companies to find out who is going to give you the best pricing, which product is getting EOL, what is the design for manufacturability issues problem. So this company, this small startup, they have solved many of these challenges. It's kind of a SaaS platform, Amazon platform for all of your hardware manufacturing needs. So these kind of companies are also coming in as well.
Sure. Thank you, Shom. Thank you, Shom. That was a nice way to conclude. And you did mention all the points. We spoke about challenges, and then there were certain solutions and action points we discussed. Overall, we had a really good insight coming out of this panel. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out and coming in for the discussion and enlightening our audience about this. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
Great.
Pleasure
Thanks.
meeting all of you.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye.